Good morning. Happy Hump Day, everyone. I guess it is Wednesday. I saw a meme joking that this is the week where you can pretty much not know who you are, what you're doing, what time it is, what day of the week it is, and it's okay. Um, which is true in a lot of ways. So, a couple things today that I thought that came across my desk, so to speak, I thought were interesting. One was from the Daily Wire. They pulled the article was titled, It Flipped Overnight. Glenn Greenwald points to the one moment that changed the pandemic and destroyed trust in media. Now, you probably saw the picture of George Floyd. That's the centerpiece of what Glenn Greenwald discusses. Now, Glenn Greenwald is probably one of the most analytical. He's very analytical, very thoughtful, and he is not right-wing, at all. He is definitely left of center, but it's interesting to see his perspective. He's actually one of my favorite commentators. So I'm not really going to read the article. I'm just going to go through some of his tweets. And, of course, starting the stage was about the death of George Floyd at the hands of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. So essentially, Greenwald begins that this was a pivotal moment in the pandemic's history. For 4 months, the message was clear and unrelenting. Everyone must stay home. Those who leave, even to go to a deserted beach, are reckless sociopaths. It flipped overnight to endorse a mass protest movement liberals liked. So he goes on to say, now some public health experts are broadcasting a new message. It's time to get out of the house and join the mass protests against racism, Politico reported at the time. He goes on to say, this episode single-handedly destroyed trust in public officials, proving they'd politicized their expertise when convenient. And corporate media celebrated a douchebag lawyer shaming families at deserted beaches, then overnight cheered densely packed street protests. So, let's see. Sorry, skipping past the actual article. In June, I was drafting, and this is June of last year. These series of tweets are from last year. Actually, these tweets are from this year, excuse me. In June, I was drafting an article on this flagrantly politicized reversal of COVID messaging. When the Intercept editors learned this, they commissioned an article for the same day to argue racism, not COVID, was the greatest health crisis, so everyone should go protest. As usual, elite institutions, media, government, public health authorities love to whine about the refusal of the public to trust their pronouncements. Complaining people turn to other less credentialed and worthy sources. But they never ask what they did to cause this. So that was essentially just, and there's an article I pulled, the article that he referenced from June of last year. It's a long article. I'm going to read part of it sometime this weekend, I suppose. And but yeah, this is something that I've chronicled myself over the past year and a half. Is that if you go outside, if you try to patronize a small business, if you tried to live your life, you were demonized. I mean, I've told my story about how I stated that, hey, we can't just lock people up and not have to, we're going to have unintended economic and psychological consequences. And as of March, April of last year, I was told that I wanted to sacrifice old people and that I only cared about money because I mentioned keeping the economy going. Yet the switch flipped, and all of a sudden, again, you couldn't run your business, you couldn't go out and try to live your life without running the risk of being arrested. But if you wanted to burn down someone's business and pack the streets, whether or not you were wearing masks, it was social justice, because racism was more of a threat than COVID was. And so after being hit with that for a few months, now people are like, oh, we need to restrict again. We need to wear masks. We need to do all this stuff for our safety. And people just aren't listening. Why not? Because, well, you could burn down people's businesses, protest in the street against racism. And there's an article out of, I forget which university it was here in Denver, that argued that because protests were, that literally argued because protests were on the edge of being violent and people would want to stay away from the protests. Therefore, it was keeping people safe from COVID because people were staying away from the protests. I am not joking. And so you had all this stuff where as long as you were combating systematic racism, it was okay to pack the streets and burn businesses down and protest. But then when the average individual wants to go out and live their life and buy stuff and visit family and friends, they're, as Glenn Greenwald put it, they're sociopaths. After a few months, is it any wonder why people are not, by and large, listening to the whole message? Oh, Omicron's supposed to be deadly, which it really isn't. That's what the data says. But even before the data came out, I could tell just from the way the news was acting that people weren't caring. So that's, why don't people listen to the experts? Well, because the experts said that as long as you're protesting racism, that COVID doesn't matter. Well, if racism invalidates COVID, why doesn't everything else? And so I think that's where, again, Glenn has a big, long article on that. I'm going to read part of it and then post it coming up this weekend. I think it's worth a read, even though it's from last year. So this next one, from Not the Bee, the sister site to the Babylon Bee, only they publish news that looks like it's satire, but it really isn't. So this one is, check out this mega thread from San Fran Lefty, who is beginning to question this whole progressivism thing. So I'm not going to read, I'm just going to read some of her tweets. This is quite the long article. I'm going to post this in the descriptions that you'll see, and then also on my wall. It's worth going through. She's really thoughtful about this. So I'll read some of it. I'm not going to read all of it because the whole printing it out was like 20 pages, and I'm not going to do that. But y'all are adults, you can read. But I wanted to go through the first few things. So she starts out, here's what confuses me about San Francisco. This is Michelle Tandler. I've heard her name, but I'm not too familiar about who she is. But yeah, so here's what confuses me about San Francisco. We have the most liberal left-wing government and population in the country. We have a $13 billion budget, and we have 8,000 people sleeping in the rain this week. What do progressives stand for exactly? I thought it was about making things more fair, about standing up for the little guy, about human rights, equality, equity, compassion. San Francisco, to me, looks like the least compassionate city on the planet. The slums of Mumbai look cleaner than the streets of downtown San Francisco. Just look at the Tenderloin, Soma, parts of the Mission, I think it's Mission District. They look like they're on the brink of death. This is why people use the term zombie. I've been a registered Democrat for 18 years. I grew up in a progressive family and went to a progressive school and have mostly progressive friends. Yet what I see in San Francisco, if this is what progressive stands for, I want the opposite. The words used here, harm reduction, housing first, criminal justice, social justice, equity, they don't align with what I'm seeing at all. Our strategy, and so she goes on to say that the strategy might as well be the exact opposite. So she posts pictures of downtown San Francisco, and I I remember this because one of my now that I'm in my current role, I don't go to San Francisco quite as much. Well, that and the pandemic. But last time I was in San Francisco, the Poop Patrol, which is a literal division that goes around in downtown San Francisco and cleans up the poop that the homeless leave in the streets and in front of businesses. Also not kidding. They'd been around so streets were clean. But my coworker and I, as we were touring, one of my clients back then was a museum. So we went downtown to visit this museum, we had to step around homeless people that were shooting up drugs in the middle of broad daylight. It's not a good thing when you have to you fall and you have to worry about, okay, am I going to be stuck by something? So a couple more excerpts. She says, "Where is our 13 billion going exactly? How do we only have 3,000 shelter beds when 8,000 are unsheltered in the streets? How is this an American city?" So, let's see. Yeah, so here's another small part. You have to wonder, with the funds we have as a city, state, and nation, is this situation on purpose? So again, this is the lefty saying this. We saw what San Francisco was capable of when the pandemic hit. We had testing, sites up in days, hotels converted into shelters, funds flowing. Yet here we are. Is this nefarious? Here's the last part of what I'll... progressives tend to blame Republicans for almost everything. Yet here we are. Not a Republican in sight. And I think we may be the most deranged city on the planet. Nowhere is there such inequity. I have never seen destitution at this scale. And yeah, there was, like when we were, last time I was there, one of my coworkers who lives there was talking about how in downtown San Francisco, a small box, the equivalent of a studio apartment, ran for, this was as of 2 years ago, it was $4,000 to $5,000 a month. And you had real estate in that area was so expensive. There was a north of the Golden Gate Bridge in that area, going towards the Northern Bay area, was a group of, they look like houseboats, and they essentially are 100 to 200 square foot. They're essentially tiny homes that are floating on the edge of the bay. And what I noticed is that every time the tide went out, the little huts, those homes would rest on the mud, and of course it would smell during the daytime because the mud was exposed. And my boss at the time told me that, they do not have plumbing in those. No plumbing, no running water. I don't know what they did exactly, but if you turned around, literally did a 180 and then looked up the hill, you saw homes up on the hills, scattered amongst the forest, and those homes were 1 to 2 million. So you have $1 to $2 million homes, and literally down the hill at the edge of the bay, you have 100 to 200 square foot huts that smell because they're resting on the mud whenever the tide goes out. And so what Michelle Tandler is echoing is what I've seen firsthand. It's not, you talk about being equal, and that is what that's what the Democrat platform is supposed to talk about, right? And that's one of the things I do actually like about some Democrat policies, because Republicans tend to be a little bit more of pick yourself up by your own bootstraps, take personal responsibility, and Democrats tend to lean a little bit more to, hey, if you need a helping hand, someone should be around to give you a helping hand. And both of those perspectives actually have time and place, really. They really do. But this is an example of the epicenter of the people who believe in the government should help you out. The city, the state should help you out if you're in trouble. And again, as Michelle was stating, there is not a Republican in sight. California is essentially a one-party state. The governor's Democrat, has been a Democrat for a decade or two. The last Republican I can think of was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's not really staunch Republican technically. The state house and Senate are controlled by Democrats, and same at the city level. So it is 100% Democrat. So as Michelle was saying, if the party platform is the government should help you out, the city should help you out, and you have essentially 100% Democrat control and have for at least the past 2 decades, or close to the past 2 decades, you would think that there wouldn't be homeless. You would think that there wouldn't be people struggling. You wouldn't think that you would need to have a division where you fuss about your job. How would you like your job to be a member of San Francisco's Poop Patrol, where all you do is literally go around, you follow a map, and there's actually a map that I could probably pull if I wanted to, where you actually go online to report where you've seen poop. And then the Poop Patrol of San Francisco literally goes around cleaning it up. There was actually a map from a year or two ago, and it showed like it was like all the records of poop that had been reported over the past year or so at the time. And San Francisco is literally covered by poop emojis. I'm not even joking about that. I spoke about how, last time I was there, you'd have to be wary of whom you were walking past just so you wouldn't bump into someone and actually be stuck by their needle as they're shooting up in broad daylight. This is supposed to be, again, one thing I like about Democratic policies, and again, 7-8 years ago, we were in a situation where I needed help. I swallowed my pride and got food stamps. It was not a fun time in my life. So I'm the first one to say that when you need a helping hand, you should be able to find one, whether it's a private individual or the state or the city, whatever. So 100% Democrat control. This is the epitome, the stronghold of people who believe that the government should be there to help you out if you need help, at least per Michelle's long Twitter thread. I'll post it here in a bit. This is the area where you expect to see that everyone's been helped. Yet San Francisco has the highest, the worst problems. I think next to Seattle, San Francisco has one of the worst homeless populations. She was citing over 8,000. I pulled a stat from last year. I actually posted it down below in my Facebook thread. That 37, again, the epitome, the group of people that believe that Black Lives Matter, yet the black population is the single most affected population as far as homelessness concerns. 37%, a majority, 37% of homeless in San Francisco as of last year was black. So these are all the people who believe Black Lives Matter, isn't it? Doesn't that mean we should get these folks off the street, get them education, get them help them break their addictions? This is the party that believes all of that, is it not? Yet we have all these problems. Again, she posted pictures, and when you see the thread that I post, she posted pictures. And these pictures, if you didn't know it was San Francisco, you would think it was a third world country by how these people are living. Yet these are all the people who are supposed to be getting help. So why is it? Why is it that you have homeless people in the street, druggies wandering around in broad daylight, and a division that cleans up human feces, yet the governor, the mayor, are partying without masks? They're locking down the middle class. The homeless aren't getting any help. The middle class is locked in their homes, and the elites are sitting in their restaurants, no masks, no social distancing, having a good old time. Nancy Pelosi closed down, was supporting the closure of businesses because COVID, yet she was able to go get her hair done. This was, LA was where the that lady, that video who went viral, that restaurant owner who was closed down because COVID and safety, even though she had an outdoor seating area, and not 50 feet away from her outdoor establishment was a movie studio's outdoor eating can't think of eating restaurant type of deal, and it was open. She was shut down because her stuff was unsafe, but the movie theater was in the movie studio, that was currently filming, by the way, even though COVID, was able to feed all of its people outside in literally the same type of arrangement that she had. But hers was illegal because it was unsafe, and theirs was okay. And this is the one-party state that talks about equality, equity, Black Lives Matter, no one being homeless, and everything else. Yet, as Michelle Tandler is saying, this is not what I'm seeing. Again, as she pointed, where was it? Nowhere. This is from her, and I'll read this again and to end with this. Progressives tend to blame Republicans for almost everything. Yet here we are, not a Republican in sight, and I think we may be the most deranged city on the planet. Nowhere is there such an inequity. I have never seen destitution on this scale. So, again, it's not to say that Democratic policies are all bad, but this is someone who's questioning, this is all the stuff we're supposed to believe, yet I don't see this worked out in our city. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, how many movies were filmed in 2020? Quite a few. Many of them bombed because they were absolute crap, but that's another story. But yeah, I'll post, I'll end this. I'll post the thread, the article to this here in a couple minutes. And read through it, see what you think, leave your comments. Again, I've stated before, I'm the first person who'll tell you that when you need a helping hand, you should be able to find one. But this is, again, Melissa Tandler, 18-year Democrat, is questioning why this is all the stuff we're supposed to believe, but nowhere is there such inequity. Exact quote from her. All right, y'all take care. Have a great Wednesday. I'll see y'all soon.